Welcome back to the channel. If you're here late at night looking for a story to drift off to, you're in the right place. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. When Maya Redfeather was born in the spring of 1996, the odds were already stacked unevenly against her. She entered the world in Clearwater, a prairie city where winter lingered long and resources were often short, especially for indigenous families like hers. Maya belonged to the Ashen River First Nation, and she was the middle child between two sisters, growing up in a household that knew both warmth and instability in equal measure. Her mother, Lorna, loved her children fiercely, but love alone could not shield them from hardship. Illness came first, then addiction followed close behind, as it often does when pain goes untreated and support runs thin. By the time Maya was 8 years old, Child Services intervened, and she and her sisters were separated from their home and placed into foster care. Those years left quiet marks on Maya. She learned early how to read a room, how to stay agreeable, how to make herself useful. Teachers would later describe her as gentle and observant, the kind of child who noticed when others were struggling. She did not act out, she did not demand attention, she endured. After several years apart, Lorna fought her way back. Treatment, counseling, and sheer stubborn determination brought her health under control, and eventually the girls were allowed to return home. By the time Maya reached her teens, the family was together again, living modestly but with renewed purpose. High school was not easy. Maya lagged behind academically at first, still catching up from disrupted schooling and emotional stress. But she was persistent. She stayed late after class. She asked for help when she needed it. Teachers noticed her effort long before they noticed her grades. Outside of school, Maya had dreams that stretched far beyond Clearwater. She loved animals, volunteered whenever she could, and talked endlessly about fashion. She sketched designs in battered notebooks, imagining fabrics and colors she had never touched. She also talked about working in cosmetology, about helping people feel confident in their own skin. In her final year of high school, Maya received a Perseverance Award. It was not given lightly. It was meant for students who had every reason to quit but refused to do so. At graduation, her family cried harder than anyone else in the room. Just months later, everything changed. Maya was walking home from a friend's house one evening when a speeding delivery truck failed to stop at an intersection. The impact left her with a traumatic brain injury and multiple fractures. Doctors warned her family to prepare for a long recovery and possibly a permanent loss of independence. For a time, Maya's world shrank to hospital rooms and physical therapy centers. She had to relearn basic movements. One arm never fully regained strength. One leg required a brace. Walking became an exhausting, deliberate act. More subtly, the brain injury altered her cognitive processing. Emotionally, she became younger than her age, more trusting, more impulsive. She struggled with memory, with complex planning, with reading danger the way others did. Still, she refused to give up. Her therapists remembered her cheerful and determined, cracking jokes between exercises and celebrating even the smallest victories. Against expectations, she walked again, slowly, unevenly, but on her own. By her early 20s, Maya wanted a fresh start. Clearwater carried too many reminders of what she had lost. She decided to move west to Port Haven, a coastal city known for its beauty and promise. More importantly, several extended family members lived there, and the city offered better access to mental health support. For a while, the move worked. Maya found stability in routine. She attended counseling. She explored the city with her older sister, Talia, who lived nearby. Talia often worried about Maya's vulnerability, but admired her constant effort to improve. Maya talked about enrolling in training programs. She dreamed again. In the long holiday weekend in early September 2021, the sisters decided to go out together. It had been months since they'd done anything social. They started with dinner at a small restaurant in the historic district, laughing over shared plates and old memories. Later, they stopped by a downtown hotel lounge, then walked to a friend's apartment where a casual party was underway. Music played, drinks flowed. Maya drank more than she should have, something that happened easily due to her medications and injury history. Sometime after midnight, an argument broke out between the sisters. It was not dramatic, just sharp words fueled by alcohol and frustration. Maya felt embarrassed, maybe even controlled. She wanted space. Without explaining where she was going, she left. At 12:54 a.m., Talia received a text message from her sister. Maya said she had met someone new, a guy. She said she was going to hang out with him for a bit. That was the last message anyone ever received from her. Her phone went silent. At first, Talia assumed Maya had crashed somewhere safe. It was not unusual for her to lose track of time. But by morning, worry set in. By the next day, panic followed. When Maya did not return home, her family reported her missing. They made it clear from the beginning that Maya was vulnerable. They explained her physical disabilities. They explained her brain injury. They begged authorities to act quickly. Days passed, then more days. A public alert was not issued until over a week later. By then, any chance of finding Maya quickly had evaporated. Leads went cold before they ever had time to form. Months later, investigators quietly transferred the case to a specialized unit, citing concern over her vulnerability. To the family, it felt like an admission that the situation was far more serious than they had been led to believe from the start. With little support, the family took matters into their own hands. They printed posters, they organized searches, they raised reward money. They walked neighborhoods late into the night, calling her name. Nothing came back. No witnesses, no suspects, no answers. For over a year, Maya Redfeather remained a ghost in the city she had come believing would give her a second chance. And then, in the spring of 2023, a discovery would reopen every wound the family had tried to survive. But instead of answers, it would only deepen the mystery.
In the days following Maya Redfeather's disappearance, her family learned a painful truth about missing persons cases. Urgency is not automatic. It must be earned, argued for, sometimes begged into existence. Despite Maya's vulnerabilities, despite the detailed information her family provided, the response felt slow and fragmented from the start. When Talia first spoke to police, she emphasized everything that mattered: Maya's brain injury, her limited mobility, her tendency to trust strangers, her inability to walk long distances without pain. These were not minor details. They were the difference between an adult choosing to disappear and a vulnerable person at serious risk. Still, officers suggested waiting. Adults, they explained, are allowed to go missing. By the time a public notice was released, more than a week had passed. Surveillance footage that might have existed was already overwritten. Witnesses who might have remembered a woman walking alone late at night had moved on with their lives. Whatever trail Maya had left behind was fading fast. The family felt it slipping away. Lorna, Maya's mother, called daily. She kept notes of every conversation, every name, every promise that never quite turned into action. She was polite but persistent, terrified that if she stopped pushing, Maya would simply become another forgotten file. Weeks turned into months. Behind closed doors, investigators quietly reclassified the case. Maya was now considered vulnerable, and the file was moved to a unit with more resources. When Lorna was told, she felt no relief, only anger. If Maya had been vulnerable all along, why had it taken so long to act like it? With no clear direction from authorities, the family stepped into roles they never wanted. They became organizers, advocates, and investigators. They printed thousands of flyers and taped them to lampposts, bus shelters, and storefront windows. They held rallies in the rain. They raised money for a reward, hoping someone, anyone, had seen something. Port Haven was a city full of people, yet no one seemed to notice Maya after she left that party. The text message about meeting a man haunted them. Who was he? Where had they met? Online? On the street? At the party? Police could not say. Maya's phone records showed no further activity after that message. No calls, no data usage, nothing. Her phone had effectively vanished. As winter passed and spring arrived, hope became something the family rationed carefully. Too much of it hurt. Too little felt like betrayal. Then, nearly 19 months after Maya disappeared, a phone call came that none of them were prepared to receive. In April of 2023, a construction crew was clearing the backyard of an abandoned luxury home in the Ridgeview neighborhood, one of Port Haven's wealthiest enclaves. The property had sat empty for years, overgrown and neglected behind tall hedges and locked gates. While removing debris near a ground-level patio, a worker uncovered what he initially thought were animal remains. When he looked closer, he realized he was wrong. Police were called, the site was sealed, human remains had been found. What stunned the family was not the discovery itself, but how long it took for them to be notified. Nearly 2 weeks passed before investigators contacted Lorna. They explained they wanted to be certain before saying anything. To the family, that explanation felt hollow. The remains matched too many details to ignore. Clothing fragments consistent with what Maya had been wearing, evidence of physical limitations similar to hers. Yet the delay in communication planted a seed of distrust that would only grow. Authorities stated publicly that there was no immediate evidence of foul play. They suggested Maya may have died the night she disappeared, possibly from exposure or an accident. The coroner's report listed missing fingers and skull damage, but could not definitively determine cause of death. The absence of answers became its own kind of answer. There was no identification found with the remains, no phone, no wallet. Later, investigators revealed that Maya's phone had pinged months earlier in a downtown park several kilometers away. No explanation was offered for how it got there. The location of the remains raised even more questions. The Ridgeview mansion was nearly 6 kilometers from the party Maya left that night. For an able-bodied person, the walk would have been long but passable. For Maya, it was almost unimaginable. She struggled with uneven terrain. She tired easily. She could not walk long distances without pain and frequent rest. And yet, police maintained that there was no indication anyone else had been involved. What troubled the family most was the scene itself. Maya's remains were found on a patio just outside a back door, not hidden, not buried, simply there. The house was empty, but not untouched. Maintenance crews had been through the property, neighbors walked dogs nearby. No one had reported anything unusual. How could a body remain undiscovered for so long in such a visible place? Maya asked this question repeatedly. She never received an answer that made sense. Then came the moment that shattered any remaining trust. Maya's father, Daniel Redfeather, asked investigators whether all personal items had been collected from the scene. He was told yes, that nothing of significance remained. Unable to accept that, Daniel took matters into his own hands. Late one evening, he entered the property. What he found made his stomach turn. Scattered across the patio were items that looked unmistakably like Maya's: a worn transit pass, hair ties, socks, pieces of a phone case, small things, easily overlooked, but deeply personal. They had been lying there, exposed to the elements, untouched. None of them had been logged as evidence. Daniel documented everything and immediately contacted authorities. The response was restrained, almost defensive. A spokesperson later stated that the investigation remained open, but reiterated that insufficient evidence to suggest a crime had occurred. To the family, those words felt like a door closing. They weren't asking for certainty, they were asking for effort, for curiosity, for someone to explain how a vulnerable young woman could vanish from a crowded city street and end up dead nearly 6 kilometers away without leaving a trace of how she got there. Public opinion began to shift as media coverage increased. Community members questioned the investigation. Advocacy groups pointed out patterns they had seen before, cases involving indigenous women treated with quiet indifference. For Lorna, the grief became layered. She mourned her daughter, but she also mourned the life Maya had been trying so hard to build, the fresh start that never had a chance, the dreams left unfinished in a city that barely noticed her absence. As months passed after the discovery, the family learned to live with uncertainty. There were no arrests, no official ruling of homicide, just an open file and unanswered questions. But they refused to let Maya's story end there. They spoke publicly. They demanded transparency. They asked questions no one else seemed willing to ask. Because somewhere between the party she left and the patio where she was found, something happened. And until the truth comes out, Maya Redfeather's story remains unfinished. The months after the discovery of Maya Redfeather's remains settled into a strange, quiet rhythm. Nothing moved forward, yet nothing was officially over. The investigation remained open in name only, a phrase that sounded reassuring to outsiders but meant very little to the people living inside the loss. For the Redfeather family, grief did not arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, filling the gaps left by unanswered questions. Lorna found herself replaying the last years of Maya's life again and again. The accident, the long hospital stays, the months of physical therapy and frustration, the way Maya had learned to walk carefully, measuring each step, refusing to let anyone see how much it hurt. Moving to Port Haven had been an act of hope, a belief that proximity to family and better support would give Maya room to heal. Instead, it became the place where she disappeared. The official explanation offered little comfort. Police suggested that Maya may have wandered, disoriented and intoxicated, eventually succumbing to the elements. But that theory collapsed under scrutiny. Maya knew her limits. She avoided unfamiliar routes at night. She rarely walked long distances alone. Her injuries made even short walks exhausting, and yet she was supposedly able to reach a secluded property kilometers away, unseen, unheard, and alone. There were other inconsistencies. The missing phone, later traced to a downtown park, had no clear path from Maya to that location. No one could explain why it had been separated from her or who might have carried it there. Surveillance cameras near the party location had already erased footage by the time police requested it. Rideshare records turned up nothing. Transit logs were inconclusive. It was as if Maya had stepped into a blind spot and never stepped out. Daniel struggled most with the idea that the scene where Maya was found had been treated as ordinary. A patio door, an open space, items left behind. He could not understand how investigators could walk through that space and not feel that something was wrong. The presence of her belongings suggested time, movement, interaction. Someone had been there with her, or at least after her. When Daniel spoke publicly about entering the property, some criticized him for interfering. Others understood immediately. Parents, especially those who had lost children, recognized the instinct. When institutions fail, people act. The family requested an independent review.
They asked for transparency, timelines, explanations. The responses were slow and carefully worded. Officials maintained that every reasonable step had been taken, that without evidence of violence or witnesses, there was little more to pursue. The absence of evidence became the shield that protected inaction. Community support, however, did not fade as quickly. Vigils were held near the downtown streets Maya once walked. Strangers left flowers and notes, apologizing for not seeing her when she was alive. Advocacy groups amplified her story, framing it within a broader pattern of missing and murdered Indigenous women whose cases were often under-prioritized or quietly dismissed. For Talia, Maya's sister, the guilt never fully lifted. She replayed their argument that night endlessly, the moment she let Maya walk away. Rationally, she knew none of it was her fault. Emotionally, that knowledge meant very little. She carried the weight anyway. Time blurred the sharpest edges of pain, but sharpened the questions. Why had Maya's vulnerabilities not triggered immediate action? Why had it taken so long to release her name publicly? Why were personal items left at a scene that should have been treated with care? Each question was met with silence or statements that sounded rehearsed. Eventually, the family learned that closure was not something the system was built to provide. Closure came, if at all, from within, from telling Maya's story until it could not be ignored, from refusing to let her become a statistic or a footnote. They spoke to journalists, they testified at public forums, they worked with organizations pushing for reforms in how missing persons cases were handled, especially those involving Indigenous women and people with disabilities. Maya's name became part of a larger conversation about whose lives were treated as urgent and whose were treated as optional. Years later, the Ridgeview mansion was sold, renovated, transformed into a pristine home with no visible trace of what had been found there. New families moved into the neighborhood, unaware of the questions that still lingered beneath the surface. For the Red Feathers, the unanswered questions never faded. They learned to live alongside them, carrying Maya's memory forward in small, deliberate ways. Lorna volunteered with support groups. Daniel mentored other families navigating missing persons cases. Talia spoke openly about guilt, trauma, and the importance of holding institutions accountable. Maya was remembered not as a mystery, but as a person, a woman who loved animals, who brought coffee to strangers, who believed in second chances, who survived more than most people ever have to and still chose kindness. The official record may never change. There may never be arrests or a definitive ruling that explains how Maya's life ended, but the family continues to believe that the truth exists, even if it hasn't yet surfaced, because someone knows what happened that night. Someone saw her. Someone spoke to her. Someone walked away with information that has never been shared. Until that changes, Maya Redfeather's story remains open, not just as a case file, but as a reminder that attention is not evenly distributed, that justice requires persistence, and that every unanswered question represents a life that mattered. Her name is still spoken, her face still appears on posters and screens, and as long as that continues, the silence surrounding her death has not fully won. That, the family believes, is how they keep her close. 14-year-old Lena Morales lived with her family in the quiet outskirts of Mesa Verde, a sun-baked suburb outside San Arroyo, New Mexico. Their single-story home sat at the edge of a cul-de-sac where evenings were usually still and predictable, the kind of place where parents believed nothing truly bad could happen. Lena shared the house with her younger brother and sister, her father Daniel, and her mother Marisol. From the outside, their life looked ordinary. Inside, it revolved gently around Lena's unique rhythms and needs. Lena had always been described as a gentle, uncomplicated soul. She was thoughtful, soft-spoken, and deeply focused on the things she loved. From a young age, she displayed strong sensory awareness and an unusual ability to teach herself practical skills. She learned to tie her shoes without help, figured out how to operate the washing machine by watching her mother once, and memorized routines quickly. Technology came naturally to her. Screens did not overwhelm her the way they did some children. Instead, they felt like a place where the world made sense. She spent hours playing games like block building simulators and online adventure worlds, carefully constructing digital landscapes and chatting with people she met through shared interests. These online spaces were where Lena felt most comfortable. There were rules, systems, and logic. Social cues were clearer behind a keyboard. In real life, conversation often felt exhausting. Online, she could be herself without being rushed. Lena loved oversized hoodies, even in the relentless desert heat. She said they made her feel safe, like a constant embrace. When her mother took her out for errands, Lena always asked to stop by Burger Barn, a local fast food place, to order the same meal every time: chicken bites, no sauce, a routine that never changed. Marisol used to joke that if the world ever ended, Lena would still be looking for chicken bites. She attended St. Eliza Catholic Academy, a private high school in San Arroyo. On her first day, she had written in a class introduction that she was introverted, shy, and kind of nerdy. It was an honest description. School was difficult, not because she lacked intelligence, but because the environment was overwhelming. Noise, expectations, and social pressure piled up quickly. Lena had been diagnosed as autistic and was considered high-functioning, but her parents understood that labels didn't erase challenges. She also had a compromised immune system and took daily medications, which made them cautious about her health and stress levels. To support her, the family hired a behavioral coach who worked with Lena on coping strategies and social navigation. It helped, but it didn't make things easy. Lena had a small circle of friends she'd known since childhood and a much larger network of online friends she spoke to nightly. Marisol worried sometimes about how much time Lena spent online, but she also saw how calm and happy her daughter seemed during those hours. The weekend before Lena disappeared began quietly. On Friday, September 13th, Lena asked her mother if she could stay home from school. She said she felt anxious and overwhelmed. Marisol hesitated, then agreed. It wasn't unusual. Some days were harder than others, and pushing Lena through them often did more harm than good. Lena spent most of that day in her bedroom, door closed, hoodie on, laptop glowing softly in the dark. Saturday was different. Marisol and Lena spent the day together, just the two of them. They ran small errands, stopped by a local artisan chocolate shop Lena loved, and even had her eyebrows shaped, something Lena had been nervous about but ultimately enjoyed. Marisol remembered her daughter laughing that afternoon, her shoulders relaxed, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. That night, Lena seemed content, tucked into her familiar routines. Sunday passed uneventfully. Late that night, just after 1 a.m., Marisol was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for Daniel to return from his late shift. The house was quiet, lights dimmed. Lena came downstairs to get a glass of water. Seeing her awake didn't surprise Marisol. Lena often stayed up late gaming or chatting with friends in different time zones. She asked her mother what time she planned to go to bed, then padded back upstairs without another word. Sometime later, Daniel came home. The parents went to bed, unaware that anything was wrong. Morning arrived the way it always did. At around 7 a.m., Marisol began preparing breakfast. Daniel was up. The younger kids shuffled into the kitchen. Lena's bedroom door remained closed. Marisol assumed she was sleeping in. As she moved around the house, something felt off. The back door wasn't fully shut. It stood slightly open, letting in warm morning air. Marisol stepped into the backyard to check for signs of a break-in. That was when she noticed the patio chairs. Several had been moved and stacked neatly against the back wall. Near them, in the dirt, were shoe prints that looked alarmingly familiar. Too familiar. A cold weight settled in her chest. She went straight to Lena's room. The bed was empty. The room was tidy, almost deliberately so. Lena's laptop was gone, but its chargers were still plugged into the wall. On the desk sat a folded piece of paper. Marisol unfolded it with shaking hands. "I ran away. I will be back. I swear. I'm sorry." The words didn't feel like Lena. They were too simple, too final. Marisol screamed for Daniel. Within minutes, they were tearing through the house, calling Lena's name, checking closets, bathrooms, the street outside. Nothing. No sign of her anywhere. Police were called immediately. Officers searched the home and yard, asked questions, photographed the chairs, and took the note. There were no signs of forced entry. No neighbors had reported seeing anything unusual. The working assumption became that Lena had left on her own. 5 days later, Lena turned 15. There was no message, no post, no online activity, no birthday greetings sent or received. The silence was deafening. Marisol refused to believe her daughter had simply vanished by choice. Lena was routine-driven. She hated uncertainty. Leaving without preparation, without chargers, without saying goodbye to her siblings did not make sense. Marisol became convinced that someone Lena trusted online had influenced her decision, gradually pushing her towards leaving, offering reassurance and guidance that felt safe to a girl who struggled to read danger the way others might. As days turned into weeks, Marisol began speaking publicly. She gave interviews, shared photos, told anyone who would listen about her daughter. Tips trickled in. A woman claimed she had seen a girl matching Lena's description walking hand in hand with an older man not far from their neighborhood. Another claimed she had seen the same girl days later. Neither lead went anywhere. Law enforcement admitted they didn't know if Lena had been lured or if she had planned everything herself. Federal agencies became involved. An age-progressed image was released. And somewhere, far from the desert heat and the stacked patio chairs, Lena Morales remained gone. For now. The days following Lena's disappearance were unbearable for her family. Marisol and Daniel alternated between frantic searching, meeting with law enforcement, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for their younger children. Every day felt like an eternity, each hour heavier than the last. The police had canvassed the neighborhood, interviewed neighbors, and checked nearby businesses, but no one had seen Lena, and there were no surveillance cameras near the back alley where the shoe prints had been found. The image that haunted Marisol most was that of the stacked patio chairs, the precise and deliberate way someone had arranged them, almost as if to hide the path Lena had taken. By the end of the first week, the Glendale Police Department officially classified Lena as a missing juvenile. The family was informed that the FBI and the Center for Missing and Exploited Children would assist due to her age, her medical vulnerabilities, and her autism. Law enforcement emphasized that it was possible Lena had left voluntarily, but Marisol insisted she would never do something like this without leaving a clear explanation. Lena's meticulous habits, her routines, her attachment to her electronics, it all suggested she would have planned better if she intended to run away. Still, officials explained that they had to consider all possibilities. Marisol organized flyers with a photo of Lena and distributed them around the neighborhood, local businesses, schools, and community centers. She also took to social media, hoping to leverage online platforms to reach someone who might have seen her daughter. Every post, every shared image, every retweet or repost gave her a small glimmer of hope. Daniel, meanwhile, stayed close to the police, insisting on being involved in the searches. He drove the streets, often late at night, retracing every possible route Lena could have taken, mentally mapping her world in a way that only a desperate parent could. 2 weeks into the search, a tip came in from a woman who claimed she had seen Lena at a small convenience store, approximately 10 minutes from their house. According to the witness, Lena was not alone. She had been walking hand in hand with a young man who appeared to be in his early 20s. The witness described him as tall, wearing a dark hoodie and carrying a backpack. The police treated the tip seriously, dispatching officers to canvass the area, interview residents, and check surveillance footage from local businesses. Unfortunately, the lead went cold. No other witnesses corroborated the sighting, and the footage showed no sign of Lena. Shortly after, another tip surfaced. A woman walking her dog claimed she had seen Lena again, this time near a small public park. She described the girl's hoodie and her gait. It matched Lena's description perfectly. However, no one saw the man who had reportedly accompanied her, and by the time officers reached the location, the area was empty. The officers noted that the sightings, though tantalizing, were frustratingly unhelpful. Each clue seemed to confirm Lena's presence, but offered no way to track her, no trail to follow. As the investigation stretched into months, the family faced the crushing reality of uncertainty. Life in the Morales household became defined by absence. The younger children, once lively and playful, now tiptoed around the house, unsure how to respond to questions about their sister. Holidays passed with a hollow feeling, birthdays came and went. Marisol struggled to maintain composure in front of them. She attended support groups for parents of missing children, meeting families whose pain mirrored her own, yet whose outcomes were not always hopeful. She learned of cases that ended tragically, and it terrified her. Meanwhile, law enforcement began exploring Lena's online life more thoroughly. Her behavior coach, teachers, and parents cooperated to map her digital footprint. Investigators found accounts in various gaming communities, some public and some private. Messages were examined for hints of grooming, suspicious contacts, or signs that someone might have coaxed her to meet in person. Nothing conclusive emerged. While a few messages indicated friendly conversations with older players, there was nothing overtly threatening or illicit. The case seemed stuck in a frustrating limbo, with Lena's online presence offering more questions than answers. Marisol and Daniel began organizing community efforts. They held vigils, handed out flyers at local schools, and participated in public awareness campaigns about missing children. Their efforts garnered media attention, first locally, then regionally. Interviews with newspapers and television stations helped maintain public interest, ensuring Lena's case did not disappear into obscurity. Yet every night, Marisol returned home exhausted, haunted by the possibility that something terrible had happened. The months dragged on. Police officers returned to the house repeatedly, re-interviewing neighbors and re-examining every detail from the initial disappearance. Forensic teams revisited the backyard, measured the footprints again, and reanalyzed the note Lena had left. Specialists reviewed handwriting, paper type, and ink, attempting to determine whether it truly reflected Lena's intent or if it might have been manipulated. Nothing new emerged, but each review reinforced the fact that Lena had been meticulous, cautious, and deliberate in how she left her home. Over a year into the investigation, authorities received a crucial break. A Border Patrol agent in northern Montana reported encountering a teenage girl seeking assistance at a remote service station near Have, roughly 40 miles from the Canadian border. The girl appeared disoriented, exhausted, and anxious. When questioned, she asked for help and indicated that she wanted to contact law enforcement to clarify her missing status. Fingerprint and identification checks confirmed she was Lena Morales. The news spread quickly, reaching both national headlines and the Morales family in Mesa Verde. Marisol and Daniel were flown immediately to Montana. At the station, they finally reunited with Lena, who appeared well but visibly wary. Officers confirmed she was unharmed and in good health. A medical evaluation revealed no physical injuries, and her mental state was assessed as stable, though she exhibited signs of prolonged stress. For Marisol, it was a moment of relief unlike anything she had imagined in the preceding 18 months. When law enforcement asked Lena about the circumstances that led to her leaving home, she was initially hesitant. She recounted that she felt overwhelmed by expectations, the pressure of her medical routine, and the social challenges of school. She admitted that online interactions had made her feel understood and that she had trusted someone she met through gaming. However, the details she shared were limited, in part because of trauma and in part because of privacy concerns, particularly surrounding other individuals involved. Police respected her wishes not to disclose certain identifying details immediately. While Lena's return was a relief, the investigation did not stop there. Authorities began looking into the older man reported in earlier tips, reviewing messages and tracing digital communications. They focused on any potential exploitation or grooming attempts, as Lena was vulnerable due to her age and medical conditions. Families in the area were interviewed again, and neighborhood canvassing was intensified to gather more context. Federal authorities emphasized that while Lena was safe, a thorough investigation was critical to prevent similar incidents from occurring. In the months following her return, Lena's life slowly began to stabilize. She was reunited with her siblings, who were cautious but excited to see her. Counseling was provided for the entire family, helping them navigate the complex emotional aftermath of a long disappearance. Lena resumed her routines at home, though with increased parental supervision and structured support. Her father and mother took extra measures to monitor online activity and ensure safe interactions, educating themselves on risks associated with digital communication. Public awareness remained high. Media outlets highlighted Lena's safe return, but also emphasized the ongoing concerns regarding online safety for teenagers. Community forums and schools hosted seminars on recognizing grooming behaviors, the importance of parental involvement, and strategies for helping children who feel isolated. Lena's story became a cautionary tale, encouraging vigilance while simultaneously celebrating her safe recovery. Law enforcement pursued charges where appropriate. They conducted searches of residences associated with suspects and collected evidence from digital devices. In particular, the man identified as Lena's online contact faced scrutiny after explicit and concerning messages were discovered on his devices. Police confirmed that these materials were under investigation and were being handled with the utmost care to protect Lena's privacy and prevent further harm. Through it all, Lena demonstrated resilience. Though quiet and introspective, she expressed relief at being back with her family and articulated a desire to regain normalcy. Counseling sessions helped her process the stress and fear she had experienced during her disappearance, while support from her family reinforced her sense of safety. Her experience also sparked awareness campaigns, online tutorials, and parent workshops designed to educate families about recognizing warning signs and protecting children in a digital age. As Lena adjusted to life back home, she maintained contact with friends from her gaming communities under the guidance of her parents and counselors. Structured social interactions allowed her to reconnect without the risk of exploitation, reinforcing positive experiences in online environments. Her story underscored the importance of balance between independence and supervision for vulnerable teens navigating complex social landscapes. Though Lena's disappearance was traumatic, it highlighted crucial lessons for families, communities, and law enforcement. Awareness, vigilance, and rapid response had been instrumental in securing her safe return. The case also reinforced the need for continual education about online safety, the risks faced by adolescents, and the importance of community involvement in protecting vulnerable individuals. Months after Lena's return, police confirmed that charges had been filed against Eddie Marcus, the man identified in connection with her disappearance. Investigators uncovered inappropriate material on his devices, as well as evidence indicating attempts to manipulate and lure Lena. While the legal process continued, authorities emphasized that the family's swift action, public awareness efforts, and law enforcement coordination had been decisive in preventing further harm. Through therapy, guidance, and family support, Lena began to heal. She resumed her education, participated in her usual hobbies, and even returned to online gaming under careful monitoring. The Morales family rebuilt their sense of safety, learned to navigate the digital age more cautiously, and remained vigilant about potential threats. Lena's story, though harrowing, ultimately became one of resilience, hope, and the power of community and familial support in recovering from unimaginable circumstances. By late 2021, Lena had started speaking publicly at events promoting online safety for minors. She shared her experiences candidly, offering insight into the pressures faced by teens online and strategies for safe engagement. Her courage helped other young people understand the importance of caution without creating fear. Families and educators praised her openness, recognizing that first-hand accounts like hers were invaluable in protecting others. In the end, Lena's return did not erase her trauma of her disappearance, but it provided an opportunity for growth, awareness, and meaningful change. Law enforcement agencies strengthened collaboration with local communities, schools, and online platforms. Parents, including Marisol and Daniel, became advocates for safe online practices, sharing their story with others to ensure that no family would have to experience what they endured alone. Lena Morales' story, once defined by fear and uncertainty, became one of survival, advocacy, and a testament to the importance of vigilance, compassion, and coordinated action in the modern world. The months following Lena Morales' return to Mesa Verde were filled with both relief and new challenges. While the physical dangers of her disappearance were behind her, the emotional aftermath was only beginning. The family faced the delicate task of helping Lena reintegrate into her life while managing the public attention her story had generated. For Marisol and Daniel, it was a constant balancing act. They wanted to protect their daughter, but they also needed to allow her autonomy. They had learned that overprotection could be just as harmful as neglect. Therapy became central to Lena's recovery. She met with a child psychologist specializing in trauma and adolescents with autism spectrum conditions. Early sessions were focused on safety, trust, and routine. Lena had been uprooted from her familiar environment for months and had experienced fear, isolation, and manipulation. The therapist worked with her to reestablish a sense of control over her environment, helping her identify triggers, recognize safe behaviors, and articulate her emotions. At first, Lena was hesitant to speak about her experiences, often retreating into silence or giving one-word answers. Her parents were patient, understanding that trust and communication needed time. Over time, Lena began to open up, recounting fragments of her journey without revealing the full details of her interactions with the man who had lured her. She described long walks, moments of fear when she realized she could not simply return home, and the isolation that had weighed on her daily. The sessions were both emotionally draining and cathartic. With every session, Lena seemed to reclaim a little more of herself, her sense of safety, her agency, and her confidence. Simultaneously, the legal proceedings began to take shape. Eddie Marcus, the man identified as having manipulated Lena, faced multiple charges. Law enforcement had gathered evidence from his devices, online communications, and witness testimonies establishing a pattern of grooming and coercion. Marcus's arrest and the subsequent investigation were highly publicized, but police and prosecutors were careful to protect Lena's identity during the trial. Only those involved in the case had access to sensitive details, and pseudonyms were used in media coverage to maintain her privacy. Marisol and Daniel attended each court session, their emotions swinging between anger, fear, and relief. They were determined to see justice done, not just for Lena, but for the principle that children should be protected from exploitation. The trial revealed the terrifying methods Marcus had employed: manipulative messages, promises of independence, and exploitation of Lena's trust and vulnerabilities. While Lena had fortunately returned unharmed, the court heard that many teens in similar situations were not as lucky. Through the legal process, Lena found her voice. Under the guidance of her therapist and with her parents' support, she provided testimony about her experiences. She spoke calmly but firmly, explaining how the manipulation had worked and how she had felt isolated from the world. Her testimony was crucial in securing a conviction. Marcus was ultimately found guilty of child exploitation, coercion, and several related charges. He received a lengthy prison sentence, ensuring that he could not harm Lena or other children again. While justice had been served, Lena's personal journey was far from over. She continued therapy for another year, gradually reintegrating into her school and social life. Her teachers, who had been deeply concerned during her disappearance, offered additional support, providing structured guidance and modified social interactions to help her navigate anxiety in group settings. Her peers were both curious and empathetic, and her experiences became a teaching moment for the school community about the risks of online interactions, the importance of vigilance, and the need for compassion. Technology played a significant role in Lena's healing process. She resumed online gaming, the very activity that had initially connected her to Marcus, but under strict supervision. Marisol and Daniel learned to monitor her communications carefully while respecting her independence. Lena was taught to recognize red flags, report concerning behavior, and trust her instincts. Slowly, she began to rebuild positive social connections, engaging with friends in safe online spaces. The balance of freedom and oversight became a model for other families in the community facing similar challenges. Beyond therapy and school, Lena discovered ways to channel her experience into advocacy. With the support of her parents, she began speaking at local events, community centers, and schools about online safety and self-advocacy for vulnerable teens. Her story was shared not to sensationalize her ordeal, but to educate others on the importance of awareness, communication, and support networks. She became a quiet but powerful voice for others who felt powerless, emphasizing the importance of seeking help and recognizing manipulation before it escalated. The Morales family also found purpose in activism. Marisol and Daniel partnered with local nonprofits and online safety organizations to create workshops and distribute educational materials. They organized seminars for parents, teaching them how to monitor online behavior safely, communicate openly with children, and recognize potential grooming tactics. Daniel spoke at community forums about practical measures for protecting children, while Marisol focused on emotional resilience and the importance of fostering trust within families. Together, they worked to prevent other families from experiencing the anguish they had endured. The emotional healing of Lena's siblings was another priority. Her younger brother and sister had spent months fearing for Lena's safety. Marisol and Daniel ensured that they had counseling as well, helping them process feelings of abandonment, fear, and confusion. They learned to articulate their emotions constructively and support one another, rebuilding family bonds that had been strained during the crisis. Family therapy sessions reinforced trust, open communication, and empathy, creating a stronger household that could withstand future challenges. Even as life slowly returned to normal, the family remained vigilant. Security measures were enhanced at home, including alarms, cameras, and controlled access points. Online safety became a daily routine, with Lena and her parents regularly reviewing accounts, settings, and interactions. Marisol emphasized that vigilance was not about instilling fear, but about ensuring safety and fostering informed independence. Lena learned the value of proactive measures and the power of asking for help when needed, a lesson she carried into adulthood. In the years that followed, Lena's story was occasionally revisited by media outlets, but always with her and her family's consent. The Morales family maintained a careful balance between public advocacy and private life. They prioritized Lena's education, social development, and emotional well-being over attention or recognition. Lena excelled academically, particularly in subjects like computer science and digital communication, finding a passion in technology that had once been a source of vulnerability. She began volunteering with organizations focused on online safety, mentoring younger children in digital literacy and critical thinking. By her 18th birthday, Lena had transformed her experience into empowerment. She was more confident, articulate, and aware of both her strengths and vulnerabilities. She maintained a close relationship with her parents and siblings, valuing the stability and trust they had rebuilt. While her disappearance would always be a defining moment in her life, it no longer controlled her identity. She had reclaimed agency, rebuilt her confidence, and used her experience to protect others. Her life became a testament to the possibility of recovery even after trauma, and the critical role of family, community, and advocacy in ensuring safety and healing. Ultimately, Lena Morales' story was one of survival and transformation. From the dark uncertainty of her disappearance to the relief of her safe return, through therapy, legal proceedings, and community advocacy, she demonstrated resilience and courage. Her family's unwavering dedication, combined with law enforcement efforts and public support, ensured that she not only returned home safely, but emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to make a difference. Two scars remained. Lena and her family had reclaimed their lives. Each step forward, each smile, each moment of normalcy reinforced the fact that even in the face of profound fear and uncertainty, recovery and empowerment were possible. Lena's story, once defined by loss and disappearance, had become a narrative of hope, vigilance, and the enduring power of family and community to protect and nurture those most vulnerable.